Hey everyone. I apologize for my voice. It's not here today, but we're going to start with a quick icebreaker so you guys are going to start to network. If you've already talked to someone, you can't talk to them. So the whole point of networking is to get to know someone in the community you haven't already met. This can be very difficult for some of us as we are shy and scared. But everyone here is very excited and looking forward to meeting new people, so I want you guys to do the same thing. Now, I want you to find one partner, and if you don't have a partner, raise your hand. So 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, Michael. Nice to meet you.
So that was a short amount of time, and how much did you just learn about this person you've never known before? That's what LinkedIn Local is about. I appreciate you guys taking it on, as I know I force you guys into groups sometimes, but it's been in your best interest. I always have your best interest in mind. They're like, we're best friends now. So without further ado, I'm going to have you guys come back into this small, intimate space where we're all going to get to know each other and get to know these wonderful speakers. You in the corner. You back there. You over to the left. I see you. Bring yourself back. Okay. So now, What I'm going to introduce you guys to is Mark. I want you guys to give a big round of applause for Mark.
Thank you.
So Mark has put a big amount of work to make this happen for you guys. I want you guys to really give him the credit where credit's due. This is all done. LinkedIn Locals are all done by volunteers. We work regular jobs or own businesses, have kids, family, and we do this on the side because we really believe in bringing you guys together. I'm really excited for you guys to really get to know each other. There's strong community here. And without further ado, Mark's going to take you through the rest of the night.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Hey, everybody. So what do you think? It's crazy, isn't it? Oh. I'd like to introduce you to my two co-hosts for tonight. This is Brian Breen and Sasha via Sasha. And you can see all of us are posting on LinkedIn all the time, so you've probably seen him on the railroad tracks doing crazy things. So just briefly, Sasha and I are writers. I'll let her explain a little bit more about what that is, but we're just professional writers. We do business, and then we also do arts writing. Brian, do you want to tell them about what you do?
Sure. And I'll make this brief too, because I've been at 3 LinkedIn Locals now, and so when I was asked if I wanted to take part in this, I leapt at it because I think it's. I don't think that I can exaggerate that. I know this. It seems like a small group maybe to some people, but this I really do think that. I've networked in a lot of different ways, and I think this can be a life-changing event and a career-changing event. So, I mean, because you know what, they always tell you it's who you know, but they never tell you anything behind that. It's this very vague statement, and there's no strategy to it, but it really is, it's who you know and it's who they know. And LinkedIn Local helps you meet people who can clarify that statement for you. And so that kind of leads me to what I do. I'll be really brief. So I've been in sales for 20 years. Never wanted to be in sales. I was an English lit major, self-taught guitar player who hated the idea of wearing a tie. Found myself in sales, was literally physically ill at the idea of it. And then I found that I could change lives in sales and became extremely passionate about how does somebody who was the person that I was, how do you go from being a storyteller who hates business to turning business into a storytelling opportunity to change lives? So now I'm a sales coach and also a youth mentor, and that's me. So.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to talk a lot about what I do, but more about what I want to get out of LinkedIn Local and why I'm here, and was excited for the opportunity to co-host. Mark and I have been working for a long time and connecting with people really all over the world. And we've built up a big community of people that are kind of distributed across the globe. But when it came to Chicago, we really basically didn't know hardly anyone here, didn't know anything that was happening in the local ecosystem, and really were not connected at all with the community. And that's something that I want to change for myself. I want to be more involved in the community. I want to get connected and excited about the things that are happening around me. So I want to learn about those things. I want to be a part of them. And I want to connect with people and find out what they're doing.
Perfect. And that's great lead in to our speakers. First of all, I want to introduce Danica. Danica, where'd you go? She disappeared. Danica Irvin is the regional director of Make Office, and she's the one in charge of who gave you all the pizza and free beer and is making this space available. So thank you. You tried to get away from me. Do you want to say a few words?
Make Office is awesome.
Yeah. Make Office is pretty awesome. We spent some time here.
And still do. So.
Yeah. There's like a massage chair on the 14th floor. I spent about 2 years there. Like a sensory deprivation tank. It was great. They make it very easy to have a professional environment where you can get a whole lot done in a very short amount of time. So anything you want to say?
No, that's great. Thank you, everyone, for coming. If you need info on office space, co-working space, event space, meeting space, come find me. Sitting out there. Or talk to Mark. He's our
Yeah.
new spokesmodel.
We've been writing a ton of articles about co-working spaces and the future of work and how it's collaborative consumption is changing the nature of work itself. So, okay, but let's talk about why we're actually here tonight is the charity. All the money that you gave to come here tonight is going to support a charity that we found that was incredibly useful and productive. And I'd like to introduce Sandee Kastrul. She's usually used to talking to thousands of people at a time, so this may be a little bit difficult, but.
That's kind of an exaggeration, thousands. Thanks, Mark. And thank you for supporting IC Stars, everyone. You all have an amazing panel that's going to talk in a few minutes. But I did want to just tell one quick story before I turn the mic over to your awesome panelists. And it is the founding story of IC Stars. So I was a school teacher, and I taught math and science. And I got to work all over the Midwest with kids who had lots of resources and kids who had very little. And the one thing that I saw was that the kids who had faced the most adversity had the most resiliency. And in fact, that resiliency was like a toolkit. And inside of it was critical thinking skills, creativity, reciprocity, chutzpah, you name it. And yet the narrative about these kids was that they weren't ready for school, they couldn't do higher math, yada, yada. We've all heard that. So if I could just take you for a moment to my chemistry class. So it's the first day of chemistry, and I would pull down the periodic table and have everybody pick their element. And that's who they'd be for the whole semester. So if you were iron, I would call you Effie. and if you were gold, I'd say, hey, you! Thank you so much for laughing. Thank you. And so after they were all assigned their elements, then I would ask them whether they wanted to be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. You know, so all the cool guys were like, solid, you know. Like some of the girls were like, liquid. But the geeks, who were thinking, where's she going with this? Because that's what geeks do, try to figure out 2 steps ahead, would say gas. Now imagine you're 17, and you've just declared to everybody that you want to be a gas, right? You're going to hear some sounds, you know what I mean? And so immediately I'd separate the class. The solids would sit in the front row, and I'd say your molecules are packed tightly together and you cannot move. Sometimes I'd talk to them as if they weren't as smart as everyone else, because they were solids. And then the liquids, I'd rope off a section of the class and say you have a little more mobility because your molecules are more spread out, but you will always take the shape of your container. And the gases, of course, because their molecules were spread out, had all the freedom in the world. So if I left the door open, they could leave. Now, I don't care where you grow up, where you come from, what every 17-year-old wants more than anything is freedom. And so right then and there, the games were on, right? The solids would be like, well, that is not fair. And I'd say, well, then you've got to change your state of matter. Or like class mobility, we have to begin to change our state of mind. And our class together is going to be figuring out how to do that. But we're going to use the language of science. And so we always had a good old time, right? Like nuclear physics was like a big mosh pit. We figured out who of our friends and family were unstable and radioactive and breaking down. And my students would always come back and visit me. And the question was always, what are you doing with your science? What's your truth? And so probably one of the brightest kids that I'd ever taught came to see me one day. And I mean, bright, like could figure out cold fusion smart. And I said, what are you doing with your science? What's your truth? And he said, well, I'm working in cleaning services, and you'd be surprised at what people don't know about the basic properties of ammonia. And we both kind of giggled and snorted a little bit. And then I realized what an incredible waste this was. This kid was brilliant. And he's basically telling me that he's cleaning toilets. And he's cheerful about it. And just as I'm like freaking out, he looks me in the eye and he says, Sandee, I don't think you're listening to me. You have always told us that leadership is making opportunities for others. And so it doesn't matter if I'm in a lab coat or a lecture hall or I'm cleaning toilets, I'm teaching people like you taught us. And that was it. My life changed. Thank you. And you know, every entrepreneur has that story when you know you were so great at something and then all of a sudden you realize you can't do that anymore. You have to do something that you might really suck at because you know it's the right path. And so this was the late 90s. Technology was hot. There were startups everywhere. And I kept thinking about Javier, who was undocumented and wasn't even making minimum wage because of his documentation status, and that he fundamentally understood the core principles of leadership. And my big question was, what if we married leadership and technology? That what technology does is presents a framework for solving problems and building solutions. If we taught people how to code, they got great jobs in IT, and this framework for solving problems and building solutions, what if we then use that as a blueprint for solving problems and building solutions in the communities that we come from? So we launched our first training cycle in 2000. We've been going strong ever since. We have a 90% placement rate for our graduates. The average earning increase is over 400% from before the program to after the program. We have over 50 homeowners at IC Stars, so people who were receiving public assistance have now purchased homes. And what's really cool about that metric is that they're buying homes in the communities that they came from. So we asked the question of, what if we determine success not by getting out of the hood, but by investing back in? How would that change our communities? And today we are in 3 cities, Columbus, Chicago, and Milwaukee. And the last metric that I'll tell you is that every single day I am inspired by an alum or an intern, was what we call our students, when they light up and how excited they are about what they're learning, what they're doing, and what they're making. So thank you all so much for supporting IC Stars and what we do.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Sandee. So, how do we do Sandee's concept on the large scale, on the global scale? That's kind of what we're talking about today. I've got 3 incredible speakers tonight. All 3 had executive positions at Fortune 100 companies, and right now they're doing something very different. They've taken 3 very different approaches to making a living while making a difference. One has chosen to leave their job and start an app, start a brand new startup from nothing. One has chosen to take the businesses that she runs and funnel a lot of her effort into nonprofits, helping children, helping people in distress. And one of them has chosen to help other companies develop their own community. So I'd like to introduce our 3 speakers tonight. Thea Durfee-Palanchik. Purvi Sonia Davi, is that right? And Monica LeBay. I got through that pronunciation. That was something else. And so I'd like each of you to just tell me briefly what you do and what you want out of your current projects that you're working on right now. And I'm going to just let you take it from here, Thea.
Sure. So it's a pleasure to follow Sandee, because Sandee really walks the talk of she's like the example of the thing I talk about philosophically. And I'm so moved by the difference you make every time you speak, especially because my 14-year-old kid's sitting back there. So you might be able to recruit him. He's a big, he's a STEMmy back there. He's like tuning this whole thing out. My story briefly, just because Mark mentioned the kind of Fortune 100 thing, is I had some background working for Caterpillar. I worked for Caterpillar overseas. I moved back to the United States. I went into a consulting firm. I left that and started my own company. And so for 16, 17 years now, I've had a consulting firm that specializes in CEO development, high-performance team building. So it's a coaching and consulting company. I started a second company in 2008 that just focuses on women's leadership called Tiara International. And then somewhere along that way, I realized that even though I had a really inspiring job at ClearSpace, which is my consulting firm, that I needed to have a bigger game to play in order to keep myself inspired. Because if I didn't have a bigger game to play, I was going to artificially create excitement for myself by procrastinating or, other ways that we manufacture adrenaline. So I realized I had to actually create a purpose. It was time for me to figure out what my purpose statement was. So I embarked on a year-long process to figure that out. And to my great relief, I landed on this vision statement that is in the world of business as a force for good. So my personal commitment is that by the year 2030, business creates a world of beauty, prosperity, and happiness. And so then I was overwhelmed for about 6 weeks. And then I thought, okay, well, I could do something in Chicago. There's probably enough to do in Chicago. We could start there. So in 2009, I began to gather groups of people together just like this. Our first one was about this size. And what that turned into was the Chicago chapter of the Global Conscious Capitalism movement. So conscious capitalism was a movement started by John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, together with the CEOs of Southwest Airlines, Container Store, Starbucks, a few smaller brands. You may have heard of some of those brands. And they all were united in this idea that business is our most powerful lever for making a positive difference. So it used to be about you quit your job and then you go do something. It's like success. I get successful and then I'm retire and then I go do something significant. But I think all of us in the room here agree that we want success and significance now at the same time. And so conscious capitalism was founded on that idea. So there are 4 key parts to it. Your business has a higher purpose than just making money. And it's unapologetically capitalistic. Like, we like the game of business. We want to win the game of business. Having just purpose and values and not having a business model that works, that's not sustainable either. You got a value system where you'll hire and fire for values, no asshole rule. Don't listen, Max. And then you seek to create value for all of your stakeholders, not just your shareholders, but you view your shareholder, your investor, as a stakeholder. And if you do a great job, like Jamie Dimon said this recently, Larry Fink just said it, the CEO of BlackRock, if you do a great job for your customers, your employees, your suppliers, and the communities that you're a part of, your investors are going to be happy. And then the last piece is conscious leadership, that you view leadership as a service and a privilege, not as a right. It's not like I get to tell people what to do. It's that leaders get the organizations they deserve. So my organization is a reflection of my strengths and weaknesses as a leader, and I need to keep working on and evolving myself and have my organization be a way that people grow and learn and evolve as human beings. So we are now in Chicago, we're the first North American chapter, we're the second chapter globally of 48 chapters, and a group of us, just volunteers like this, we put on events every quarter. And so for me, I stayed in my job, I stayed in my company, and but I linked up to this bigger movement about how to use business as a way of making a difference in the world. So that's my story.
Wow, that's going to be tough to follow. My name is Purvi Dave, and I am the founder of FamTime. And a little bit of a backstory about me. I have a background in finance and computer information systems, and I previously was working for an international logistics company, dealing with IT, project management, IT, product development, and e-commerce, various background. But the idea for FamTime was birthed about 2 years ago when I was just going through some challenges in my life, personally and professionally, and just started asking certain questions in terms of why I was so unhappy in my life. From the outside, everything was great, and but there was just that lingering feelings that you have on the inside that you just sometimes kind of subconsciously bypass and not always look at them or give them awareness. And that's when I started digging deep, and helped me kind of go and understand some of the situations that I went through in my childhood, and that I wasn't able to properly talk about with my parents. And finally, when I was able to deal with some of the trauma that I went through in my childhood, it just made me realize that I wish I had a better emotional connection with my parents, that I was able to articulate some of those issues that I had at that time in a proper manner, which I know has impacted me most of my life. And as I started digging, there really wasn't that many outlets out there for kids to be able to understand and identify their emotions, especially at a younger age. Therefore, my goal with FamTime is to help bring more of the emotional intelligence skills of self-awareness and how to recognize tough emotions and how to self-regulate. And so that's what the app is meant to do, is to help young children from the age of when they can read and write, and bring more of the emotional intelligence skills into the homes. And hopefully we can get more schools to bring more of the programs of ESL, because I think emotional intelligence sometimes is underlooked, and but it is probably one of the most key factors in life, is how do you guide yourself in terms of how you feel about certain situations, certain people, the things that you like to do. And the more we understand ourselves, the better we can navigate. And I want to help kids have that at a younger age, so that way when they are adults, that they're in tuned with themselves in terms of what they want to achieve in their life. So that's my story.
Wow. Well, my story is a little bit off the rails in every way possible. Thank you very much. I grew up in communism. I grew up in Poland. It was a communist country, and so we grew up extremely poor. I guess for a lot of people, they don't understand what that means, but just to give you a framework of what that means is we had food that was rationed, so you had to, like my mother would drop me off at school at 8 in the morning. She would wait in line all day for a piece of meat. So anyway, so that may or may not happen. That may or may not get delivered that day. That's the upbringing that I had. And also, I mean, the thing that to mention here is everyone. I'm good. Thank you. Everyone grew up that way, so I didn't feel any different from anyone else. You know, everyone was in the same level, in the same class, because that's what communism does. Everyone was Catholic, everybody was white, everybody was dirt poor, but I guess middle class to those people. So it was a very interesting and simplistic way to grow up. And my parents immigrated here when I was 9 years old, and for them, America was everything. This is the dream.
That's so good. You got this.
I'm also going through menopause, okay?
Let's hear it for
Thank you for that. And we're right back. So anyway, I was taught that, I was a very creative and artistic child, and that was the way that I had coped with a lot of the changes, coming here not speaking the language or trying to assimilate into this culture, which is a very different culture. And so my way of coping was art. It was creativity, it was drawing, it was painting, it was doing everything that kind of took me away from the situation that I was dealing with. And then, of course, my parents' dream was, either you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you get an engineering degree, right? Straight A's. B is not acceptable. A minus, not acceptable. So super high system, like we're here, we're in America. This is the street, Golden Streets country, okay? Everything's plated in gold, and you better just excel, and so that was drilled into us from an early age. My sister became a nurse practitioner, and she went to Ivy League school. So she achieved the dream. Me, on the other hand, I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a doctor. I want to go into commercial art. I remember saying this to my parents. I want to go to college to be an artist. And then my dad's like, no, you're not. Oh, he said, you can go, but I'm not paying for it. So I was like, okay, great. No support. What do? They said, go and get a job, a real job that pays money. So I had to go and work in corporate America because that's what you do. So I worked for some really interesting companies. Started out kind of in weird places. I did IMIS back in the 90s, which is really weird. I didn't mention that to you before, but just very interesting things. You're just trying to find your way. You're 20 years old. What do? Just try different things. So I tried working for corporate. It was different. There was a lot of rules I figured out, and also I didn't like the cubicle. Right? Am I right? I was like, wait. I remember, I was 27 years old. Before I had an office, and then something happened, and I quit that job, and I went to work for the assurance agency. I got licensed in casualty and property insurance. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to come here every day to this cubicle? For 20, 30, 40 years in the cubicle? It was a lot. I was like, no way, I didn't want to work in the cubicle. I was like, wait a minute, this is the American dream? Wait a minute, no. But I did it. And then I went on to work for Motorola and Johnson Controls, and then Pepsi. And then after Pepsi, it was like 2007, 2008. I always did my creative stuff on the side, just so we're clear that it didn't go away. After in 2007, all of a sudden, we had the collapse of the market, and you couldn't get a job. Nobody could get a job. I remember going to the unemployment office, I don't know why, but picking something up, and it was packed. There was a line out the door. And I was like, oh, it's bad. It's bad out here. So then I decided, you know what? I have been working for corporate and taking a chance on this corporate life, but I think maybe it's time to shift, and maybe it's time to take a chance on myself. Maybe it's time to stop making other people money and start thinking about making myself money, So I thought, okay, what skills do I have? Let's assess. I was a HR director. I left in my past, I coached people. I brought teams together. I hired people. I fired people. I said, okay, good. I got those skills, so I can get a team if I need to, which was great. And then I thought, what else can I do? Racking the brain. I can take photos. People said they were good. I figured, hey, okay, I have something. Maybe I'll use, this was also the beginning of the digital age, kind of, like digital had just started. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to just go out there and take photos. Why not? And more people came to me, and I just did more and more photos. So teams, photography, and then, of course, that moment came when I decided, you know what, this is all great, but I always wanted to have my own creative agency. Let's do that. I decided, why not do that too? So I did. I became a creative director, started my own creative agency, and then just recently I decided, you know what? I'm doing a lot of coaching for 1871, for PWCC, for other people. Why don't I just coach people too? Why not just do that too? So for me, how the giving aspect was born is I feel like that's a lifestyle. It's not something you just do. It's not a one-off. It has to be part of who you are. So in every area of what I do, whether it's photography, creative direction, or whether it's coaching, I'm giving back in all those areas because I feel like people have helped me and shaped me into who I am today, and I definitely feel that I get more out of the giving than I'm getting, because that is helping me to be who I am, because it's not the end, right? It's not like you give and then you're done. It's the beginning. It's something else. It's shaping you. It's helping you to have more compassion, think more about other people and not just about your own circumstance. And then also understand how great we have it in this country, how amazing we have it, how much privilege we have, and how much freedom we have. And then that context is framed completely, because all of a sudden then you realize, you know what, this is such a short life. We have so much more to go, and we have to just make an impact with the time that we have left.
All right, that's on. Okay, you guys keep that mic. So because of time, and those were, one more huge round of applause for those awesome stories. And the fact that, Sandee talked about adversity, and I'm sure everybody here can see it, but like each one of these stories starts with awareness of adversity and then how you can use that to help others. So I know we discussed having multiple questions, but I think we want to open it up to everybody out here. But I will say this, if there was one parting, like these stories are all powerful, but if there's one parting thing about making a difference in our lives, if maybe we'll have each one of you finish with that. But right now, I think just everyone has been so patient, and I would love to open it up to questions. So show of hands, first hand up, who's got a question? And I'll go ahead and bring the microphone to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Howard Fox. I was amazed at your stories and the fact that part of the purpose of this gathering is to talk about story. How do you work with the people whose lives you're touching to learn to tell their story, not just to tell their, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I'm an accountant, a teacher, a financial advisor, but how do you coach the people you come into contact with to tell the story about how they can help make a difference in other people's lives? Because stories are very powerful, much more than just titles. How do you do that?
Do you want to go?
Man. All right. So I think it's teaching people to tell their story is just basically asking them questions like, tell me about things that you feel passionate about. Tell me about things that have made an impact for you, and then share that. Because when you've been impacted by something, you can't not share that, right? That is actually the connection that's missing for a lot of people. This is the way we connect as human beings. We want to be able to connect to people on a very basic level and just say to them, hey, this is something that I've gone through too. This is something that a lot of other people have gone through, right? So by taking some of the pain of their story, whatever their story is, and transferring that into a way that could help someone, that is the way that I coach my clients to share their stories.
I agree with Monica. The only thing that I would add on to that is, for me, what has helped is just to be more open. The more I'm vulnerable and able to speak in regards to my situation, my story that I went through, I've had people on LinkedIn that I've connected with all over the world that have talked to me in regards to, and these are adults, I went through something similar in my childhood and I just didn't know how to overcome it, or I went through a bad divorce, or, just things, not they did, but their parents. But these are all things that they just subconsciously didn't ever, talk about them, because it was just like, okay, how do we move on with life? And how do we make things work? But the more I've become open, the more I'm more vulnerable, then people just feel comfortable to come and tell me and just open up and express themselves.
That was great. I'm good.
Questions?
Yes.
Curious about for your app, because I've got a child with ADHD. So I didn't know if that app had fit in for somebody with ADHD, if that was taken into account.
And
Yeah.
could you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm
Because not
sorry.
everyone heard the question.
I'm sorry, the question was that if the app is able to help children that have ADHD, and it is to be able to help any child that may be having difficulties in terms of understanding their emotions. So it's not limited to any specific type of characteristics that a child might be going through. So yeah, I mean, it is definitely available. And it's called Fam Time. I don't know if I mentioned that.
And just let you know that we are doing Fam Time now with our kid. And if there's like pictures that they can pick instead of like writing. If they want to write, they can write. If they want to just pick pictures, they can. It's great.
My question is basically, I noticed some links between everyone's stories. I'm kind of a big picture thinker, and I was just noticing a lot of connections. But one of the things that I was noticing was, Monica, you had to leave your job, leave the corporate world to kind of find meaning. And Thea's working on this idea that we can bring this meaning into our works, and I know that for myself, kind of being a freelancer and having all the boundaries between work and private life kind of collapsed, but it's ended up being a good thing. And I think that work-life balance isn't going to look the same in the future as it does now. So I'm just wondering more about like, what about this notion that like, is this notion of a job that's something that funds our real life, which starts after we leave work? The end of this kind of thinking, that here's my professional life, here's my personal life. I work from, 8 to 5, and this is what I do so I can live my other life. How is that changing? I mean, I feel it's changed for me, but in what ways is this changing, and how is this transformation impacting, the way that we live and work?
It's a great point that that it's not this sort of like I work and then I live, like work and then I have a life. That's really breaking down, and we're just not willing to settle for that anymore. So I think that what we're finding is that it really comes down to what's the purpose of work, what's the purpose of business, and we're finding that organizations that are really purpose-driven, that have a sense, not necessarily doesn't have to be a social purpose, but it can be just like a sense, Louisville Slugger's purpose is to make players great. Like there's a reason people go to work at Louisville Slugger and they know what it is. It's not to bring 25% more to the bottom line. And so when people come together around a common purpose, they begin to get a sense of there's actually something, there's a bigger game. Like we're choosing to play this game of business, this particular game, whether it's technology or healthcare or the creative arts or a nonprofit. We're choosing to play that game because it's the game we all like, But there's something bigger happening, and it's that, so we're beginning to see organizations, they're called deliberately developmental organizations, where they actually realize that it's flipped. So I'll tell you, for instance, the CEO of Barry Wehmuller, which is an $8 billion holding company that purchases, like, they buy up small manufacturers in Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and what they have now said is that the purpose of our business is to grow great people, and in order to do that, we do manufacturing and consulting. So it's that we're getting now that the purpose of coming together to collaborate together on something, on some sort of business, is to actually evolve as people. And in order to do that, we just play the game of whatever this particular business is. So that's one perspective on what you said.
So what I'll add to that is that I think it's a personal choice. For me, for the longest time, a 9-to-5 was something that I was kind of engraved to, that, hey, you know, you get a good job at a corporate and, you know, the salary is what matters. And for the longest time, it was good because I was learning and I was, you know, developing myself, and I felt like I was making a difference in that corporation. But I think as I started my journey, I knew that there was something more that I wanted to give back to this world. And the goal for me is to help our humanity evolve as our consciousness keeps growing. And just because how things were done in the past doesn't mean that that still is how we need to continue to do it. There's so many different things that are coming into our world with technology and how people are advancing and growing. And I was just at a point personally in my life that I needed a change, and I needed to bring forth, give it my all to work for this mission that I've put together. And if that meant that I had to leave my corporate job, then I was ready for that. But I think it's a personal decision. You have to understand where you are in your situation, what you want to accomplish, what your goals are, and there's a lot that you have to look at before just making that decision in terms of, okay, I'm gonna go save the world, you know. So yeah, that's my take on that.
So for me, I think it's pretty seamless. Like, I don't really feel like my work life and my, volunteering, my contributions is anything different. With my photography, I do a lot of events for non-for-profits, whether it's TPAN or a Bike Ride for AIDS, or whether it's a charity that I'm photographing. I feel like I have the freedom now to just say yes or no to those projects. So the freedom that comes from choosing which charities I want to contribute to, or which charities I want to be partnered with, that makes it seamless for me.
All right, we're going to do just one more question. Yeah, because patient individual has been waiting. So, and then we're going to go ahead and then finish with the panel. And obviously afterwards, you guys, whatever questions you have, corner them. Do not let them leave. Get their business cards.
Apologize to everyone. This is not worth the last question. So one of the things I've kind of like picked up from just listening to each of you kind of articulate your passions around your kind of individual work is you have a clear framework with which you kind of run your decisions through. When you get to a point where you've built the freedom for yourself to make decisions around what you want to do, and you have integrated your work with your life, and it's kind of seamless, when new opportunities or decisions to be made present themselves to you, as opposed to like an answer that I'm looking for, I'm just interested in the questions you ask yourself, which allow for you to develop that framework.
What questions do we ask ourselves in terms of how we decide who to partner with? Is that what you're asking?
When it comes to like a decision in your life, like a point where it's like, okay, I got to make a call, I'm going to make the jump between working in a business that I love and being an entrepreneur, or difficult decisions that don't necessarily have right or wrong answers, but it's really important to continue moving forward. What do you ask yourself in
Well, I think for me, that's 180% values. What are my values? Can I stand behind this, or would I do this even if I didn't make any money or not? And if the answer is no, then no, I don't do it. If the answer is maybe, then I say, okay, well, how can I contribute to this? Like right now, I'm working with the Taproot Foundation. I'm building their website for Voices for Children, so it's a very advocacy-based site. Somebody called me, reached out to me, and asked me if I'd want to participate. I had no idea really what Voices for Children was really, but then I thought about it, and I thought, I can do that. But I have boundaries, you know? I said, well, what does this really realistically entail in terms of my time? And then in terms of, you know, when they want this project to be done. And if I can contribute those 5 or 6 or 7 hours, then fine, I'll do that. But I have to set boundaries. The boundaries have to be set because otherwise I'd be depleted constantly giving, you know?
It's a great question because it's sort of, my answer to this is also my answer to what I would leave people with is, it's really about being clear about what your purpose is. So why am I here? And that can be a really big question, or it can actually be in this moment, what is my purpose? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then checking, just like you said, with values is the other big piece of it. So if it's aligned with my purpose and it's aligned with my values, is it aligned with my strengths? Is it something I'm good at, or is it something I'm trying to do and actually I'm not that good at it and it's going to require a lot of energy for me to do it? Then maybe I would say no to it. So it's kind of like putting inside of that triangle, then it's either like it's a yes or a no. And you know, the purpose piece is sort of what I would leave everybody with, because it's easy. I've had people say, well, you know, conscious capitalism, I'm not the CEO of the company, so like, or I'm working in a company, what can I do? And what I would say is the one thing that you can do is every day get closer and closer to getting a sense of what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is the difference I'm supposed to make that only I uniquely at this time can make? And then you run yourself like a little business. So how can I align my relationships and engage the people who are the key stakeholders in my life? How can I engage them in my purpose? What are my values? How can I take actions and make sure that I walk my talk of my values with all of the different key stakeholders in my life? And how do I continue to develop myself to be more of a conscious person, more of a thoughtful, present, aware person in my interactions with people and in the choices that I make in the world? So that was a twofer. Thanks.
I had something real quick. So that just got me thinking, you know what? Everything is about relationships, everything, right? And I feel like everything that I do is based on relationship. If I have a good relationship with people, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, of course I have to pay my bills. I mean, I'm not, you know, that we have to make money eventually, but I mean, otherwise we're on the street. But having said that, if I have a good if I develop that relationship will be more valuable to me than anything else going forward. Those people will elevate me without me having to do anything. Do you understand what I'm saying? So for me, it's not really about. It all comes down to, is this a relationship I want to have? Yes? Great. Or not. It's not about getting, it's about giving, right? Because it's always about giving. It's not about what I'm going to get out of it. It's about can I contribute something, and is this going to be a relationship that I want to continue? Are we good?
I concur with both of you guys. I think values are really important, and identifying why you're doing what you're doing. And the biggest factor for me, especially with fam time, with emotional intelligence, is self-awareness. Recognizing yourself in terms of the situations that you want to put yourself into, the steps that you want to take forward in terms of your the business relationships you want to work towards building, or doing collaborations with certain people. You have to kind of feel that out and seeing the vibe, if there's a good energy between the two people. So for me, the biggest would be self-awareness.
All right, huge round of applause for them. And thank you guys for your stories. I was even taking notes over here, so I'm going to get first in line. Thank you guys. Definitely network here. And here's the thing. I mean, these are three amazing individuals up here, but there's also amazing individuals out there, so don't overlook that. So anyways, thanks for coming. Enjoy the pizza. Here's Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, great. It's there's so many. I wish this was going on all night because I've got 100 questions for all three of you. I'd like Nicole to come up and talk about some of the administrative stuff.
Organization, it's my favorite. Okay, what I want you guys all to do right now is stand up. Oh, I know, you've been sitting. It's like, oh, lethargy. It's almost 8. What am I doing? No, you're up. You're about. You're with amazing people right here. You're with amazing people out here. So with the administrative stuff, Mark's going to, after I'm done, go into another networking exercise. So you meet one other person. I see you guys packing up. Do not. You need to meet one more person before you leave. It's a requirement. Usually I'm the one who sends out the survey. As you can see, I'm very sick. I also just started a new job, so yay for me. But it also requires a lot of my time. You will not get a survey. If you have anything you want to tell us, my feelings are never hurt. It's always for the betterment of our community here as LinkedIn Local, which you're now a part of. Please email linkedinlocalchicago@gmail.com. Very difficult, I know. So email us or find me, tell me this sucked, this was amazing, whatever you want, you tell me. Now there's Mark. I also have a reverb, which is great.
Yeah, I like that. This sucked part. Yeah, that's what I'm going to send you, right? Yeah, thank you very much. You are all three incredible speakers, and I want to try to do something else with this group and with. But in the meantime, first of all, I want to thank Karen Cinzio. She brought cookies, so please grab a cookie. Do not let these cookies go to waste, for God's sake. Also, I wanted to let you know about something Sasha brought up to me, something very simple that you can do to meet people very quickly if they have LinkedIn.
Take out your phones.
If you have LinkedIn, it's a new, relatively new feature. If you go to the home screen, go to the home, and then the connections, the second one over here, your list of connections here. In the center it says find nearby, and you can turn that on right now if you'd like to. What that does is it turns on a Bluetooth, and it's really terrifying when you do it. You hit turn on Bluetooth, and then everybody in the room pops up. Like 50, 60 people pop up. This is, if you're not terrified by Bluetooth, then it's incredibly useful. I've used it at events, see, and now I've got a page full of people that I can connect with immediately. And they can connect or not. Right. Is it creepy or is it freaky? Yeah, it's if you're in a group like this that you can pretty much trust people, and it's very useful. I've got Sasha and I have all kinds of technical little wizardry that we do because we're kind of nerdy. And now the one thing I'd like to leave you with, it's open networking. Do whatever you want within the bounds of reason. But I'd like you to find one person that you haven't talked to tonight and say, what was that all about? What moved you about these stories that were up here tonight? So you're on.